allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We could have a roll call as well.
Commissioner Menace,
Here.
Commissioner Segerbrook,
Here.
Commissioner Renzi,
Here.
Commissioner Heinen, Commissioner Green,
Here.
Commissioner Womack,
Here.
Chairman Kiefer, Park District, School District, Fire District, Library District.
And commissioners, we have in our packet the minutes of the last meeting dated February 7th. There we go. And trust everybody's had a chance to review them. Does anybody have any issues or suggestions or clarifications? If not,
I think just a minor, I think it was Commissioner Heinen that was in at 7:02, just a minor thing at the top on the roll call section. Not a big deal, but
okay. And Marilee, do you have that? Okay. And with that, then we can approve the minutes. And we can move to the next part of the meeting, which is the public comments. So, anybody in the audience wish to have something said that is not part of the meeting here today? This is the opportunity you have. Okay. Let's move to development report. Staff?
There is actually no report this evening with the President's Day holiday yesterday. The village board has not met since our previous Plan Commission meeting.
Well, gee, we get to run a meeting. I'm sure we're gonna have some old business to handle. First case is 1751-011-717.SU. And we're not gonna hear that one either, I guess. So I'm looking for a motion because staff is requesting a continuance to the March 7th Planning Commission meeting.
I'll move. Second.
Been motioned for a continuance and seconded. If we could have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Womack,
yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Segerbrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Menace,
Yes.
Chairman, Commissioner Renzi.
Chairman for the day. I should vote with my power and say no. Yes. So with that, we can move to the next on the old business is case 1729-070816.SPR DNA Athletics. And for that, we have a staff report, so turn it over to staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the Plan Commission may recall, this project has been before the Commission before. This is for a proposed new construction retail building in the downtown area. It comes before the Plan Commission for site plan review, and it is also subject to review and recommendation by the Historic Preservation Commission with respect to a certificate of appropriateness, as the site is located in our downtown historic district, which is also recognized on the National Register of Historic Places. The applicant previously proposed a two-story retail building. Just for site context, this is on the north side of Lockport Street between James Street and Fox River, directly east of the trolley barn building that's undergone its own restoration. The applicant was successful in receiving site plan review approval and also approval of their certificate of appropriateness for that two-story building. Worked cooperatively with the owner of the trolley barn building to obtain vehicular access from the north from Main Street through the trolley barn parking lot. Coordinated on such details as final placement of the building, and then proceeded into the village's building department building permit process. As part of that process and kind of as the plans evolved, the applicant encountered obstacles in kind of two different areas. They're somewhat related but separate. One pertains to the overall construction cost of the building with respect to financing and how certain improvements of the building would be considered relative to the financing aspect. And then separate but related is also the issue of accessibility and the potential requirement for an elevator to service a specific portion of the second floor of the building. So kind of in combining those two different factors, the applicant is now wishing to proceed with a revised plan that calls for a one-story building on the same lot. As the commission may recall, this is an existing retail business located in a separate community. I think when the building permit plans went in the fall, the hope was that they could start construction before the weather broke in the fall. Obviously, when these issues arose, under winter time, the pressure was off for a little bit to work through them. But now with the spring weather, fast approaching, and with the past few days, you'd say it's here. But I think there's a renewed sense of urgency to try and get something resolved. Staff is very supportive of the use. We feel that they would really complement the downtown. That we are hopeful of working through these issues in a timely manner, and certainly recognize that coming back through the process was not the applicant's first choice and not an ideal scenario. But having said that, staff is prepared to hopefully work with the applicant and find a favorable resolution. In terms of the reviews, staff would submit that the certificate of appropriateness review by the Historic Preservation Commission is a little bit more detailed in terms of the criteria that are applied. It's kind of a more stringent review than a village-wide site plan review, which really talks about required parking, landscaping, and building materials and so forth. So staff's proposal relative to the process is to receive the Plan Commission's input this evening, and then the case is scheduled for consideration by the HPC on Thursday night of this week, and staff would then kind of combine or synthesize the recommendations from both boards and present that to the Board of Trustees on March 6th. So moving to the actual revised plan here. Again, we have our site context. It is in somewhat of a transitional area, whereas the portion of downtown that's, for example, between Des Plaines Street and Illinois Street, what I still think of as the 500 block, it's all zero lot line buildings. Majority are two-story, mixed use with either apartments upstairs or some professional office. As you head west of Des Plaines and especially west of Fox River Street, the buildings transition more to a residential scale of building, although some have a commercial use or restaurants. For example, the Sovereign, Valar restaurants are adaptive reuse of the residential structures. The applicant has revised one-story elevation, really takes the same DNA, the same building blocks from that approved two-story plan, and just revisits it in a one-story format here. So you'll see the face brick with the precast stone cornice and sills for the secondary elevations is proposed as a composite siding material. And then in the one-story scenario, as we see here as proposed, the roof line is probably the most significant difference from the two-story structure, which had the parapet and the flat roof. So staff's question, and again, this will be presented to the HPC as well as the Plan Commission, is to consider how this one-story design, both in terms of materials and also architectural, kind of a vernacular architectural approach, fits into the downtown. I think it was staff's preference that a two-story solution would be viable, but we certainly recognize that it's not for the two challenges that have been identified. Obviously, it was the applicant's preference as well, as that's what they initially proposed and what they received approval for. But due to the two challenges of the financing aspect and the accessibility, the one-story redesign is now what's being proposed. Staff would submit that the plan does comply with the requirements of the site plan review ordinance, which call for quality, building materials. We have face brick on the front elevation. We've approved a composite siding material for secondary elevations elsewhere in the village, most recently on the Wash U car wash project. So This will be a little bit of a different look, but the same, same type of material. So staff welcomes some discussion on that. There were a few finer points. I know on the actual site plan itself, the handful of parking spaces that were previously proposed, the two-story, there's no longer room for those as the footprint of the one-story building occupies that area. The trash enclosure does remain. It's oriented to the north, and the applicant's representative has confirmed that there is an easement or right of access to service that trash enclosure, as there had been previously for both the trash enclosure and the handful of parking spaces that were included on that approved two-story plan. So with that, I think staff would be in position to request a favorable recommendation. We'll certainly make note of any input and direction that the Plan Commission or Commissioners may have with respect to the architecture, and then staff will be prepared to convey that input and those thoughts to the Historic Preservation Commission on Thursday, and then move forward with both bodies' recommendations to the Board of Trustees. So that will conclude the staff report.
So, is the, someone present for the applicant? Oh, if you could step to the podium, please. Also, if you could raise your right hand, we need to swear you in. Do you swear that you'll give nothing but the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
Thank you. And please state your name and spell your last name.
David Mitchell, Mitchell.
And Mr. Mitchell, do you have, well, I guess you may have some things to add, but because you're also going to be, as I understand it, before the Historic Commission on Thursday?
Correct.
Okay. So, I don't necessarily know if you have it in your head what you want to say to the Planning Commission or what you want to tell the Historic Commission, but basically, do you have anything that you wish to add to staff's report?
No, I think that the bottom line is to make this, this project viable from a budget standpoint, you know, between the elevator issue and the construction costs, and as Jonathan mentioned with the financing, I mean, this is the best and really the only solution to that, to developing that site with what my client's looking at doing.
Okay. And just please stand there because some commissioners may have some questions for you then. And with that, I'll turn it to the commissioners for questioning. Okay, well, before we do that, is there anybody from the public that wishes to comment on this case? Okay, well, in that case, how about the commissioners? Anybody wish?
So the changes were just made for budgetary reasons to make the project go ahead?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
You don't envision a different usage or anything like
No,
that?
it's the same. The original building was a two-story with the full basement. Basement was a stockroom, internet sales. First floor was retail, and the second floor was a flex space, which was kind of a multi-purpose space, and that was the hang-up with the elevator. And but again, between the budgetary issues and the elevator, you know, it kind of pushed them beyond their appraisal value. So we're simplifying the basement side of it, taking the multi-purpose room, relocating that to the back of the first floor, so it's accessible. But it's the exact same function and components of the building, just kind of rearranged and flattened down to a one-story building.
Okay, thanks.
Is the intention that this would be a single tenant or a multi-tenant?
It's a single tenant. They've got retail on the first floor, and they've got an internet sales division that would be in the basement. And then the multi-purpose space is, you know, kind of a community space and maybe rented out for various activities, but mainly used by them.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Could you, as far as the architecture, I know staff had made a suggestion about, potentially the roof form. And they noted in their report, I mean, this block of the downtown, as it starts to go west, the character does change. I mean, if you were a block or so east, right in the heart of the downtown, certainly there are a couple of one-story buildings, but most of them are the two-story facades and the flat roof. Now, I think once we get out to this block, I mean, we're seeing a lot of actually residential structures, and I think that's what had been on this site was a residential structure.
Correct.
And then obviously with the big trolley barn next door, I mean, I personally, the pitch roof doesn't bother me. I mean, and to be honest, that's a traditional building form to have a facade with a parapet and then to have a pitched roof behind that. You find that a
Correct.
lot in traditional architecture, whether it's, downtown or just for commercial buildings, you'll see that historically. So I think hopefully the Preservation Commission will, have some good feedback on that as well. I mean, I think there was a suggestion that possibly you could look at brick on the entire building or maybe at least on 3 facades. I don't know if that's again something that's gonna break the budget.
Right, I saw that in the staff report, and that was my concern too, and that's something we'll have to look at.
But I mean, I know you're doing the quality, hardboard type siding. I mean, it's
Right.
got a traditional appearance. I mean,
Exactly. It's all a traditional look. It's just
Right.
really maybe a personal preference. And, the original building, 2-story, was a single slope roof to the
Right.
back of the building, but since
Right.
we've basically doubled the length,
Yeah,
in order to get that same single, I mean, it'd be almost impossible.
right. I mean, you'd have to hide the whole thing behind a parapet, I think.
Right,
because,
exactly. So
and-
again, from a budgetary, after the first exercise, we're trying to streamline it and,
Right.
and,
And I think there will be also even from Main Street, 126 behind with the trolley barn parking lot behind there. I mean, this building will even have some visibility from that direction, so. I
Correct.
mean, I think every elevation's important on this building. I mean, it's just due to the fact that it's opened up a little bit between buildings, it's, there's space where you're gonna see this building from every elevation, so.
Right.
I think the appearance is important, but I mean, I think you've got a pretty traditional looking masonry facade and, I mean,
And the 2 buildings to the east of that are both residential, I mean, pitched
Yeah.
roofs, I should say, shingled roofs,
Right,
of the
right.
residential, because again, that was kind of that's what was there before we
Right,
tore it
right.
down.
So I think in that context, I mean, I think you are blending into that part of the streetscape there.
Mhm.
So I mean, I think you're fine there. I mean, obviously, I think you're obviously covering more of the lot now than you were before, but
We're trading impervious roof for impervious parking lot,
right.
so,
And I know there was, they took a look at the parking, and I guess staff is confident that with the downtown parking that's available for, their business here, that it's gonna be accommodated. You're not gonna have a parking shortage or,
right.
I mean, the multi-purpose room, I don't know, exactly what kind of events they may have there, but, I mean, there, I suppose there's possibility that at certain times they'd have more of a demand for parking than others,
Yeah, that's certainly possible,
And
yeah.
I don't know with the trolley barn, developers to the north with that parking lot, if there'll ever be discussion, where possibly they could share some parking on off hours or something like that. I don't know.
Mhm.
It's just something for, for thought,
Yep, I would agree.
Okay.
And since Commissioner Segbrook talked about, I'll direct this to staff. Since there is a Thursday meeting, should there be another stipulation added that, because I think we're basically deferring to, to the Historic Commission, because they need to issue a COA. So should be a third stipulation that the applicant receives a favorable COA or receives a COA from the Historic Commission before we approve it? Because I don't want to step on anybody's toes, and if the Planning Commission says yes, and then what's there left for the Historic Commission, but they have to issue, it's, kind of, I don't want to be caught in an egg, chicken situation either.
Well, I'm comfortable representing, that sentiment. If you would like to formalize it by way of stipulation, we can brainstorm some wording for that as well. I do think, and I'm not trying to give the Plan Commission a short shrift, I think the COA's criteria for evaluation are a little bit more rigorous, a little bit more detailed than the architectural provisions of the site plan review ordinance.
Oh,
So
I would agree with that, and that's why I deferred my questioning, because I figure it's kind of irrelevant, because I don't have the same standard that they have. They have a much higher one. Let me just poll my fellow commissioners. Do you think there's a need for a third stipulation that any action we take is subject to the applicant receiving a certificate from the
Certificate's required regardless, right?
yeah,
Or-
I believe Chairman Renzi's suggestion is that he doesn't want to give the implication to the Historic Preservation Commission that the Plan Commission is just blindly, I don't want to say rubber stamping, but moving the case forward to the village board without taking into consideration what the HBC's concerns might be. So if I don't,
Right,
trying to
and
put
we
words in your mouth,
also
but-
didn't really have much discussion on, I mean, Commissioner Segbrook touched on the wraparound brick and the roof and such things, but we really didn't have any discussion of that because, as I understand it, it really doesn't much matter as to our approval of that, because it's really their call as to whether or not they look to what is there and say, okay, this fits with the two residentials, or those residentials, we're seeing everything being taken down, so we want to have something more, something else, or whatever. And so that's really the genesis of my suggestion, is that since we're not really going into that and we're not deciding for them what they need to look like, we just would note something about the application would be, I guess, granted if we didn't have a review, but or I suppose subject to our review, but we didn't have a review. But that's kind of the thought process here. So if you feel we need a third stipulation for those purposes, we can add one. If you feel no, we can just, well, I don't wanna stop anybody's
I think
toes
we-
asking questions, but otherwise I'd entertain a motion.
I just had one additional question in terms of any signage on the front facade of the building. Is it like a print on the awning, or what do you guys?
With the new, the original two-story, we didn't have much of wall surface above with the windows, but at this point, we're looking at, the main gable right here for our signage. I mean, there will be some signage on the awnings potentially, but the main focus would be on
Something
the
inset
main
into the
gable,
brick
yeah.
on like a
Not
precast
even
sort
inset,
of.
but surface mounted, something within the sign ordinance, but, I'm thinking something more surface mounted in that main gable there.
Probably something, again, a little more traditional looking, probably not, internally illuminated channel letters, there'll probably be something.
Correct, oh, yeah, right,
Some more traditional looking that'd fit in the downtown character, I think.
correct.
We had something similar to this recently, right, with the one on Joliet Road, the one where they ended up, remember originally they were gonna tear down and build the new, then they came back and decided to save the old structure, and it came back to us, and it went back to Preservation Commission too, I think. So I think maybe it had already gone back to Preservation first, and then it came back to us. Is that how it
Yeah,
happened?
the review was a little different in that case. That
Right.
wasn't in a historic district. Their review was pertained to the providing a recommendation on demolition of the
Right.
structure.
Right.
So the HBC actually said, you know what, we'd like to see the building saved, but
Right,
we
right.
aren't objecting. So the building owner actually had the ability to proceed and obtain a
Right.
demolition permit from the,
But I meant when
Building
they
department.
changed their mind and came back, then they came back before both bodies again, right?
yeah, staff presented it to the HBC more as a matter of courtesy and to demonstrate
Right.
that the building was gonna be preserved.
Right, right.
And then you're correct, it returned to the Plan Commission for a
Right,
second.
so I think when it came to us, it had already gone back to them first, and maybe in that case, they were kind of deferring to us, because it was more of a site plan
Correct.
review. Although, I guess that was listed as possibly a contributing structure. I mean, they had a right to review it, right? So,
Yeah, it was more for the issue of demolition. and
right,
since
versus demolition, because it potentially could have been a contributing. So here, it's kind of the other way around, where I think they're more the primary review, and so, yeah, I mean, while we can defer, I think you're right. I don't think it would hurt to just put a stipulation on saying that, we're general support, but we want to defer the, discussion of any final changes in elevation details or something to them and let them make the final decision. Is that what you were thinking?
That's,
Yeah,
that's,
Yeah.
either way,
I would
with or
support
without
that.
the courtesy, I'd support it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I support that.
Well, I see the heads nodding up and down, so I think we want to then have a third stipulation with, as to, as to the structure and components, or what are we talking about with the COA?
Well, I mean, we're saying site plan review, but I think we wanna say, we wanna, defer, final decisions of elevation and materials, et cetera, to HPC review or something, so that it's clear they're making the final recommendation, not us, I guess. Something to that effect.
I guess we could just simply say, as a site plan, it is approved, but subject to the historic preservation's
Issuance of a certificate of appropriateness.
issues of, after review of the building materials and
Right, something like the elevations, building materials,
elevation.
subject to HPC COA review or something.
We could do that. I think that's fine. And
Yeah, I guess I'll,
He's writing it down
I
so
see-
I
I
can
see-
make the motion.
I see one commissioner writing.
Well,
So,
then I'll-
We'll entertain motions.
okay, I'll make a motion. I'll move that we recommend approval of site plan review for the proposed new building at 24210 West Lockport Street, subject to the following two stipulations in staff's report, and a third stipulation that we defer final discussion and decision of building elevation and building materials to the HPC COA review process.
Second?
Okay. The motion has been made and seconded, so please, we can have a roll call.
Commissioner Menace,
Yes.
Commissioner Womack,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Segerbrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Renzi.
Yes. So with that, the motion has been granted, but you need to be back with staff Thursday to the HPC, and then see if we go to the board. Well, one way or another, you're gonna go to the board. But thank you. All right. With that, we move to new business. It is 1753-01311117.su. And it's Plainfield Plaza, and we turn to staff.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This case is for the property at 15420 South Route 59. This is also known as the South Building of Plainfield Plaza. The applicant is seeking special use approval for a drive-through Jimmy John's restaurant on the south side of the building in Plainfield Plaza. In addition to the drive-through, the applicant will be making improvements to the facade of the building, making adjustments to the site plan, as well as adding trash enclosures. The village's zoning ordinance requires that drive-through facilities located in the B1 zoning district be approved through the special use application process. Just to provide some site context, the subject property consists of a 29,500 square foot multi-tenant retail building, concrete parking lot, and a rear outbuilding that collectively sit on 3.5 acres. This represents the south building of the Plainfield Plaza Retail Center. The adjacent land uses, zoning, and functional street classifications are identified as follows. To the north is the north building of Plainfield Plaza, and that is Zone B1, as well as some single-family residential, which is Zone R1. To the east is Illinois Route 59, which is classified as a major arterial. And Plainfield Cemetery is located across the street from Route 59, and that is Zone R1. And then there's also a vacant land parcel that is zoned BT across the street as well. To the south of the property is Fort Beggs Drive, which is classified as a major collector. And some vacant farmland, Zone B3, is located across the street from that. And then to the west of the property is single-family residential, zoned R1. The applicant is requesting special use approval to permit a drive-through facility for a planned Jimmy John's sandwich shop on the south side of the building. In order to facilitate this improvement and also to enhance the overall appearance of the property, the applicant will be removing the existing awnings and the south and east elevations of the building and will be replacing the awnings with new beige EIFS fascia as depicted on the provided renderings. This slide shows the planned the planned east elevation of the building, and then this slide shows the proposed south elevation of the building, and you can see the drive-through window that's going to be added to this elevation. In order to provide for the drive-through, the applicant will be making adjustments to the existing site plan and traffic flow pattern along the south end of the building. The existing parking spaces in this area will be removed. This area will now be converted to a dedicated eastbound drive-through lane and a parallel eastbound through lane to provide escape from the drive-through lane and also to facilitate access from the western portion of the parking lot to the eastern portion of the parking lot. And the excess concrete that is currently running all the way to Fort Beggs Drive will now be replaced with a landscaped area separating the parking lot from the public sidewalk and another landscaped area separating the sidewalk from the street. A new landscaped island will extend west parallel with the south elevation of the building, providing separation between the parking loading area and the drive-through lane. This island will also include the drive-through menu board. The site plan renderings provided by the applicant show that stacking for up to 4 cars between the pickup window and the menu board and up to 4 cars at the menu board can be provided in accordance with the parking and loading standards delineated in the zoning ordinance. While these renderings only show 7 cars, it's in staff's determination that there is adequate length for stacking of 8 cars. And staff recommends moving the menu board approximately 10 feet to the east from the location depicted here to ensure proper and adequate stacking of 4 cars at the drive-up window and then 4 cars at the menu board. The planned hours of operation for the business are not yet confirmed, but the typical hours of operation for Jimmy John's locations in the area are generally from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. In order to be sensitive to the adjacent residential properties, staff recommends that Jimmy John's adhere to these hours of operation. In regards to parking, Plainfield Plaza provides for a total of approximately 158 shared parking spaces throughout the entire center, which includes a total of approximately 49,500 square feet of retail space when you include both buildings. While there are a number of different uses as well as existing vacancies, this represents a parking ratio of about 1 space per 313 square feet of retail area, which falls just outside the parking standards for general retail and personal services, which are 1 space per 300 square foot of retail area. However, staff notes that there is adequate space in the rear of the property for an additional row of parking should it become necessary in the future. Furthermore, a mix of uses on the property with peak parking needs at different times should help ensure that any parking issues are mitigated. The planned Jimmy John's store will be 2,000 square feet. As a specialty carry-out food shop, this use will require 1 space per 200 square feet of gross floor area, or a total of 10 parking spaces. Staff did receive some concern from one of the neighboring residents in regards to the appearance of the rear of the property. And staff will work with the applicant to ensure that the rear of the property is cleaned up, well maintained, and that any debris on the site is removed. While the applicant does not plan to make substantial facade improvements to the rear of the property at this time, they do plan to repaint the exterior of this elevation. And furthermore, staff is requesting that the applicant improve the property with trash enclosures. The trash enclosures will be located along the rear of the building and will be provided to each tenant. Renderings showing their design have been provided. In order for the Plan Commission to recommend approval of a special use, it must make 2 findings of fact as follows. The first finding of fact that needs to be made is that the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate area for the purpose already permitted, nor substantially diminish property values within the neighborhood. Staff finds that there may be some impacts to surrounding properties, primarily in the form of activity in the drive-through lane. However, staff also finds that there has always been activity in the rear of this building, including deliveries, waste removal, and employee and patron parking, and does not find that what is proposed will increase activity on the site. Staff also finds that the drive-through menu board will face south, away from existing homes, and will be located at least 200 to 400 feet from the property lines of nearby residences, providing adequate distance. The location of the drive-through lane along the south end of the building as opposed to the west end of the building will also help to mitigate any impacts. Potential noise will also be mitigated by existing vegetation along the property lines as well as an existing outbuilding on the property. The applicant has also been cooperative and willing to make reasonable modifications to be sensitive to surrounding properties. Staff finds that the typical hours of operation for the planned drive-through business to be reasonable and of no impact to nearby properties during the nighttime and early morning hours. In addition, the applicant will be making several improvements to the property that will enhance its overall appearance, including the addition of trash enclosures, removal of impervious area, and the addition of landscape areas along the south end of the property, and improvements to the facade on the south and east elevations of the building. Staff believes that these improvements, combined with the addition of a national tenant with a convenient drive-through service, could draw new patrons to the center, as well as new tenants that will help to revitalize and improve the value of this property, as well as the value of surrounding properties. The second finding of fact that needs to be made is that the establishment of the special use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the adjacent properties for uses permitted in the subject zoning district. Staff finds that the proposed use and plan improvements will help to revitalize the shopping center and serve as a catalyst for drawing other businesses and new patrons to the center. Staff believes there is a demand for this sort of business in the area and that it will nicely complement existing businesses in the center, which currently include a grocery store, a deli, a laundromat, a liquor store, and a nail spa. Staff believes that the new customers the drive-through business will generate could potentially lead to an increase in sales for existing businesses and draw new tenants, helping to improve the value of the property. If successful, staff is hopeful this could also potentially lead to interest in eventually developing the property to the south. Staff is also encouraged by the applicant's level of cooperation and dedication to improving the appearance of the property, and if this business and the rest of the shopping center are successful, staff is hopeful that the applicant will continue to make improvements to the property, helping to further mitigate any impacts while also improving neighborhood property values. In conclusion, staff finds that the establishment of a drive-through facility on the subject property will not result in negative impacts to adjacent properties or uses in the area and will complement existing uses on the property and in the general area. Staff also believes the planned improvements will benefit the subject property and surrounding properties in the neighborhood. In advance of any comments from the public hearing or input from the Plan Commission, staff recommends approval. Should the Plan Commission concur, the following motion is offered for your consideration as stated in the staff report. It has also been brought to my attention from one of our commissioners about the different recommendations that staff has made in the report in regarding adding additional parking in the future if necessary, moving the menu board, ensuring that Jimmy John's adheres to the hours of operation that are indicated in the staff report and that trash enclosures are provided. If the Plan Commission would like to formalize these through stipulations, they are welcome to do so, but staff feels comfortable with the applicant's plans and recommends approval. And that concludes the staff report.
Very good. And also, what we're dealing with is not a full site review of this. They can run a Jimmy John's by right in the area. What we are only addressing then is the drive-through application, which has to be approved by the village, correct?
That is correct.
And that being said, is there anyone present representing the applicant? Yes, if you could please go over there at the podium. And we need to swear you in, so if you please would raise your right hand. Solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Very good. And could you please state your name, spell the last name for us?
Leo Solarte, Solarte.
Okay. And Mr. Solarte, is there anything you wish to add to staff's report?
I believe it concludes everything we've come up with. We think it's a good plan for the center, and it's going to enhance the shopping center.
And couple things of the staff, for instance, recommended the moving of the menu board 10 feet to the east, which would be closer to the building. Is that something you can or can't do?
I don't foresee any issue with that. I would have to check with the architect and obviously the tenant, but I don't think that's an issue.
Okay, and staff also, apparently, around the area, it's, businesses run from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. Is that your understanding as to when the drive-through would be in operation as well?
I believe so.
And in terms of your tenant, let me ask you, would your preference be that the hours of operation be linked to any stipulation, or is this something that can be worked out with staff, you feel?
I think we could work it out with the staff.
And that then, I'd ask you to please stay where you're at and turn to the audience. Is there anyone that has a question or statement regarding this case? If so, we need you to step up to the microphone. Sir, please. And also need to swear you in, so if you would please raise your right hand. Is all the testimony you give before us here today the truth, so help you?
Yes.
Very good. And please state your name, spell the last.
Yeah, Mark Krippel, Krippel.
Okay. And go ahead with your comment or question.
Sure. I guess fundamentally, don't have any real issues with, Jimmy John's restaurant or drive-through per se. But I do think there's some traffic issues that really haven't been addressed in the staff report and need to be looked at, I think, in a little more detail. And then also, with respect to the rear of the property, I live in a house behind that parking lot, and it is kind of a mess.
If you can, please, we ask you to, if you're going to point something, take the microphone with you, because we can hear you.
Well,
but
just if you can see the brown roof, the two-story on the north end of the property there, that's the house that I live in. So
Okay.
we see, for a B1 zoning area, there's quite a bit of activity at that location between the two buildings and the two uses. But it's allowed, and that's what we put up with. But there's a lot of large delivery trucks. There's a lot of outdoor storage at times. Lately, there's been stacks of cardboard pallets and stuff that are being stacked up behind there and, hauled away with a long flatbed semi-trailer, so it's stacked 3 high and 8 feet wide. I mean, so that's the kind of outdoor storage that's being utilized out there now, which I don't believe is in conformance with the existing code.
Well, I think, though, that as I understand it, all we're talking, though, about what's before us is the question of a special use for a drive-through on the far south of the building. What you're talking about now appears to be code enforcement, I think, so maybe a conversation with staff would be in order?
Yeah, I can certainly bring this up with code enforcement and have them address this. I've already made mention of it to the applicant, so hopefully they can address it before we go through the code enforcement process, but that's certainly an option as well. So.
But, and I bring it up mainly, and I want to get to the traffic issue here in a minute, but because they are asking for additional use with respect to the zoning, I think it is an opportunity to bring up issues with the property in general. They're asking for extra, so it's an opportunity to at least point out some of the things that aren't quite up to code currently with this existing uses. So, I mean, I do believe it's somewhat relevant.
No, I did not. It's relevant as to the village, but not necessarily for the planning commission, because we're thumbs up or thumbs down as to the special use application. But yes, I've had the misfortune of driving on that parking lot, and yes, I understand exactly what you're talking about, and I assume that anyone else who's been on that side of the building understands that, which is also why I would say that you can notice that although the applicant is only before us as to a drive-through, there is also conversation then about trash enclosures and about the appearance of the building and such things. So there, you are correct, there are some things that we can do as to, I guess we can go to a give and take process.
Yeah,
Because they are asking to be allowed to have a special use, and in return, this is what they're doing for us.
Yeah, and I guess I would encourage you with respect to the discussions of, as part of the site plan review, approving the additional parking, I would discourage you from doing that, because I think at the point at which that's ever needed, that there's a lot of work that should be done in that parking lot, rather than just putting in a, you know, a strip of asphalt along that grass in the back there, that the parking lot itself is kind of a minefield if you've driven back there. It's hard to make your way through that back parking lot without bottoming out in a pothole or two. But then if we could, I'd like to turn then to the traffic, and if I could move over and just take a look. If you had a shot without this drive-through facility, the proximity to Route 59, could you go to where the drive-through was? I mean, the new drive-through layout? There you go, okay. If you notice, the nature of the parking and the ingress and egress, it's offset, so that the parking lanes, you know, the parking path here, in fact, the arrow gives you the impression that this is one way, and it's not. It's actually two-way traffic in here. I mean, at least it's used that way. There's no signage or anything like that in the parking lot to discourage use. So that when someone's coming, you know, to the south to try and get back onto Route 59, if they simply follow the traffic pattern down, they're in this lane right here. And it happens quite frequently where somebody who doesn't know, you know, not real familiar with the parking lot, they come down and they sit, and they're sitting over the entrance here so that nobody can turn right into it. And then you got a car stopped here at, you know, Route 59 within 30 feet of that intersection. And it's a pretty dangerous situation, kind of as it is right now. And you're talking about, you know, allowing an additional flow of traffic, encouraging, you know, more use. And I think it could be done, but some thought needs to be given to how you get in and out of here. Because there's times of the day, in fact, a good portion of the afternoon, because of the way that traffic light is, it only, you know, it's only turning green every 3 or 4 minutes. And in 3 or 4 minutes, the traffic on Fort Beggs can stack up, and it stacks up well past where somebody's trying to take a left to get out onto Route 59 again. And so, yeah, routinely, you'll see cars, I can see them from my kitchen window, you know, backed up in this area here. So there's really no opportunity for a car coming from the drive-through to get back, you know, out onto Fort Beggs and onto Route 59. It's kind of it's a bit of a dangerous situation, and I think you just need to take a harder look at it. People coming from here, you know, I don't know what you could do here, if you could put in some kind of mountable, you know, apron or something like that.
It sounds like you're talking about like a pork chop island to have everybody come out, force them to go right, and
well, I don't know
allow
if
the
that's
people.
workable for I mean, everybody's trying to get back on 59.
Well, that's also, we have 2 entrances for egress and ingress as well. So,
I mean,
let me ask
ideally,
staff about the
ideally, you'd
traffic.
like to see, you know, people coming in and out here, but that's just not going to work with a drive-through coming here. So, I mean, I think there's some work that needs to be done. I didn't hear any of it, you know, being
Well, again,
discussed.
that's a valid point that you're making as to the traffic flow pattern. And what I was asking was, asking staff, was there any conversation with the traffic committee for this, or any input from them at all?
No, there was no discussion from them on this particular case, but I did bring this up with the applicant, you know, made them aware of it, asked if they had any plans for improvement at this time, and they said that they did not. So, I mean, again, this case is, that's before us, is for the special use for the drive-through,
Well,
and then and the improvements that are being, the other improvements that the applicant plans to be making. So I do understand the concern. I didn't seem to find a real workable solution at this time, other than maybe making it right in, right out, which, would potentially restrict access. So.
Well,
If
I think the drive-through needs some sort of traffic control, either a yield or a stop, because gentleman is correct in that the drawing that we have shows that everybody is supposed to be going north through that area, and in actuality, people go north and south. I have seen that on the thing as well. So I'm thinking the least we can do for the safety of the drive-through, it'd be much like we have at the McDonald's, I believe, by 135th Street, where there is a much closer cut off to a private road right onto Route 30. There are multiple stop signs there, and I think even at the drive-through for the 127th for the coffee, that there is a traffic control device there as well.
And
There's some, yeah, from the Starbucks, yes. I believe that we should have something akin to that at the end of it, because we don't really want someone, especially since Jimmy John talks about speed, they just, and boom, they're off, and all of a sudden we have crashes in the intersection because everybody's going every different way about it. We need to be sensitive as to the people leaving, especially their sight, line of sight is going to be limited until basically they clear the building.
And if
So-
I may interject or add, just to reiterate, I think Mr. Bogda touched on this some in his report, but the property owner, the property manager on behalf of the owner will be resurfacing the entire parking lot, both the front and rear parking lot. So to the residents' question or concern about the drivability of the parking lot in the back, that will be addressed and resolved. And I think as part of that, there's an opportunity for renewed striping. If you were to visit the shopping center today, you can tell it would definitely benefit from some additional striping, maybe directional signage. One project that comes to mind is the Starbucks we have at around 126, just east of 59 there.
Oh,
It's
yes.
a little bit of a convoluted drive-through, and they have some generous directional signage that kind of maybe takes the rough edges off of some of the quirkiness of their traffic patterns.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's,
Um,
yes, quirky is a good word.
And then I would also point out, I believe to the rear, to the west, they're actually consolidating access points and probably making some improvements there, where there are currently 2 curb cuts that would provide ingress and egress, and by dedicating that space now to the drive-through and the bypass lane and shifting all of the access, kind of consolidating it farther to the west, is actually improving, making an improvement over existing conditions, in my opinion at least.
I'd just point out with respect to that third curb cut that it is basically unusable as an entrance when Napa was there and they were using that as parking. You couldn't get in and out other than to literally just drive in and drive out. But people are using it now that Napa is gone, in order to avoid making that left turn so close to 59. They're actually taking one of those 2, going along that side of the building, going to the west, and then making the left turn out there, because it's much safer. You got a little distance, you can see, cars as they're coming at you off of 59. Whereas, once the drive-through gets put in there, then you really won't have that anymore. It's everybody. There's gonna be no option to go further west to make a safer left turn to head towards 59. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying that it needs some thought needs to be given to it, because there's cars coming around there pretty quick, and you don't have a lot of, you don't have a lot of room. If somebody's lined up halfway into that exit, and nobody can, and that person coming off 59 going west is trying to make a right turn into that lot, everything just jams up and stops, and you've got people, trying to, with traffic on 59, if they don't have the arrow, they're trying to make it in between two cars, and, you know, 2 or 3 of them take off at the same time, there's not room for 3 cars to stack there. There's room for 2, but that third car is gonna be sitting out in the middle of 59, in front of oncoming traffic.
Right, we understand that, that's,
thought that was
no, you made that point before and we can see that, but hopefully with, the resurfacing, presumably, let me ask the applicant. Since the parking lot is being resurfaced, will some directional arrows be put in so it can be, better marked as to where you're actually supposed to enter and where you're supposed to exit?
Yeah, I believe my client will do whatever is best for public safety here. They will be milling down both the front and back parking lot and resurfacing it, restriping it. So adding some directional signage or addressing this won't be an issue.
And does anybody else, is there any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we can close that, and let me ask staff then. Is there a feeling that we should enter any stipulations with this for the involving the drive-through as to that the drive-through is approved only with the resurfacing and the painted and or directional signage?
I will leave that at the discretion of the plan commission, but I think that the applicant has been pretty cooperative with us in making additional improvements to the property, and so I'm comfortable approving the special use facility as is without the stipulation. Just based on their cooperation, I think that they're willing to work with us on any and all outstanding issues.
Well, with that, let me turn to my fellow commissioners. Does anybody feel strongly one way or the other?
No, I think that if
Thank
they're
you.
willing to work with the village engineers and planners and everybody so far, they probably will continue. And I like the fact that they had options where they could put it. They could put it on the west side of the building, but then it would impact more of the residents. They put it on the south side here, so all of those cars stacked up, all their headlights are just pointing at the cemetery. So hopefully no one will be woken up from headlights at night. So I think that, yes, it's a legitimate issue with the traffic. But I think working together as they have been and being cooperative, I think we'll find a solution without having to stipulate it further.
And anybody else have anything to add?
At the to the north of that building, you can get around to from the east to the west, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so the proposed, I guess, traffic flow, if you took that first entry point to the property and wanted to go through the drive-through, you would then go all the way around.
All the way around the back, yep.
No, I'm sorry, we have closed public comment, but we are well aware of the situation. Basically, go ahead.
So it is accessible, and that would be, is that one-way traffic, two-way traffic to the north?
It's
there?
used mostly for deliveries right now, and I'm sure that there are cars using it however they please, but that could be addressed with the signage and when we do the parking lot.
But I guess
Make
the-
it one way.
Well, the area, I believe, is, we have standard width for 2 lanes, and I don't believe that would be like 50 feet, or...
I don't believe it's 2 lanes.
2 lanes,
It's
so-
enough for one car to fit, not
Yeah,
2.
so they can go multiple directions, they just can't go at the same time.
So again, some sort of signage or wayfinding through there to aid. And then I suppose, to help direct traffic in there, you could even look at potentially some sort of a raised warning strip through there to kind of keep people as they pull in to veer to the right might be beneficial to keep that traffic flow going. I don't know that a right in, right out is necessarily what we want to go with here, but
Okay.
those would be my comments.
Anybody else?
No, I certainly understand and agree with the, I guess, easternmost entrance kind of causing some potential serious issue with traffic coming in and off of 59 onto Fort Beggs. I don't know if there's any way possibly to modify the landscape area to somewhat widen the path there, I guess, adjacent to the drive-through lane to allow, I mean, it would be obviously extremely tight, but to either allow two-way traffic or some opportunity there on the south end of the building that cars could get to that western entrance. You know, that'd be obviously one way to alleviate the issue, but unfortunately, with where that easternmost entrance is, I don't know that there's much you can do there short of a right-in, right-out to try to alleviate any congestion trying to get back to 59.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a question about now this again isn't necessarily directly related, but the north building. Is that kind of an alley that runs behind the north building? Does that alley actually have access from that street that comes in from the west?
From the in between the buildings, you can access
Yeah.
it, but you can't access it from the north.
Okay, so is there actually some kind of, I mean, on the survey it shows an alley back behind the building, but is that like a
It's more of a
vacated?
service drive for the tenants for the deli and the grocery store.
Okay, but is that alley, so the street that's west of there, is that street cut off, or can you actually access that, service drive behind there from that street?
No, there's a fence.
There's a fence, so it's totally cut off there, okay. But does that alley behind the north building then go all the way to the north end and come around, or is it,
No, it literally stops at the edge of the north building.
so it's just kind of a one-way alley behind the building, just kind of okay. I mean, and the thing I'll say is, I mean, yeah, I understand our purview is maybe a little bit more limited just due to the fact that the drive-through is at the one area. But by the same token, I think in the big picture, we can say, well, I mean, it's in some respects it's a win-win because obviously the owner of the building, I think, is using this new tenant as maybe some leverage to improve the entire property. I mean, I think that's what's unusual is, yeah, we're putting one tenant space with a drive-through at the south end, but I guess, you're proposing to actually facelift the entire property building-wise and then redo the parking lots. So, and of course, we know Napa moved out. Napa's in a new building up north of town. I mean, also, I think we can all agree, but, by today's standards, if this building was being built today, I mean, some things would be done differently. I mean, there wouldn't be as much pavement. There'd be a lot more green space. There'd be a lot more landscaping. So, I mean, if anything, you have too much pavement and too many options for people to drive different directions because things aren't well defined. I mean, personally, I'm not sure a right-in, right-out wouldn't work at that entrance because basically you've got 1-2 full accesses off 59, and then you've got this full access to the west off Fort Beggs. So I'm not sure a right-in, right-out that close to a stoplight intersection would be a hardship. But I think it's also a matter of figuring out, what's the traffic pattern of the cars, for parking and which way do people need to turn and everything else, I mean, you can't just look at something like that in a vacuum. You've got to look at everything that works with it. But, I mean, the other observation I'd make, and again, I'm sure this is, the garage that's on the west side of the property back there, is that kind of a maintenance building for the whole center? Is that what that is?
Yeah, we use it for storage for salt, tools.
Okay. And I mean, this discussion of any future parking, I assume we're referring to that green space on the west side of the property. Is that what we're referring to?
Yes, that's what I was referring to.
So, my thing is, instead of talking about more pavement, we should probably talk about less pavement because there's probably a more efficient way to lay out the parking on the pavement that's there now. I mean, I'd rather see the owner start to do a landscaping program on that western part of the property to do more of a buffer to your neighbors to the west. As an example, I mean, if you go to the jewel store at 135th and Route 59, and you drive around behind that center, there's a pond behind there, but and that was built in 1999. And if you look at the pine trees that were put in there now, I mean, you literally cannot even see the subdivision on the other side of the pond. And I mean, I'm not suggesting that, again, a lot of what you're doing here I think is voluntary. It isn't directly related to the case for the drive-through, but it's more of I'm trying to encourage you to think about the big picture here. I mean, obviously you're making a big investment in the building. You're hoping to attract more tenants and everything. That's great. But, I mean, the one thing the whole thing lacks is there's almost, I can almost count on one hand the number of trees on the entire property. So I would say in the future, that's one thing you can think about is what can you do to enhance the landscaping, obviously, by taking out this little bit of pavement along Fort Beggs, you might be able to do a little something along there, although again, you're right near a busy corner, traffic, that's really not the place to put landscaping. Maybe, possibly a couple of street trees, I don't know, but that's something staff would have to look at. But I'm just throwing these things out there for thought.
My client is looking to do something on 59 with the limited landscaping that is there.
Right.
The property just changed ownership in
Right.
August.
Right.
And the new owner, that was one of his first things is,
Right.
we need landscaping here, so.
Well, sure, and that's
Sure,
what
he's
I'm-
willing to do things to.
Okay.
to
And,
better
and
enhance
this
the
isn't like
property.
a condition or anything else. This is
Sure.
just more of a suggestion, something to think about. But, overall, I think it's a win-win. I think having the drive-through on the south end of the building, facing east, it's making the least impact on the residents to the west. I think it's just a matter of looking at this traffic flow and figuring out how it can work the best and be the safest, Because the last thing you want to do is have more congestion there or more potential for accidents or anything else. You want to make it as safe as it can be,
I agree.
Okay.
And just to follow up with that, kind of what I'm thinking also is that my chair to the left is empty, and I believe at one of our meetings, the word overparked was used for the parking lots, and rather than have the limited green space that the chairman on my right talked about, maybe since we're resurfacing the entire area, if we look at the west, especially when we look at the diagram we have done far more parking in less spaces than they have with the one row. Maybe when it's resurfaced, you can look out for traffic flow and figure, okay, let's have one lane go north, one lane go south, and all of a sudden there is 3 lanes of parking, or maybe even 4 lanes of parking. I know we can fit 3 there. And I'm just thinking that may be a way of addressing everything, and since the applicant has already stated that they're going to be resurfacing, it gives us an opportunity to, if you will, reorient partially some of the flow pattern for the traffic. So maybe we can take some of this and say, okay, let's look at what we can do with that eastern parking place, as opposed to one, not only are we potentially short a couple spaces, but also what we can do for the traffic flow to avoid any other problems, because I think the Starbucks is a good example on 127th and Route 59, because that drive-through basically comes from the back, but it is on the south side of the building, and the people just go right into the parking lot, and then they have to exit either to 127th or to Route 59. So I'm thinking we're not reinventing the wheel, so to speak, here, and maybe then we can look at how they have solved that problem, or I'd say we, I don't mean that, I mean staff, because that way the applicant will not have to come back before us. We're not looking at any continuance. We're simply saying, okay, we can have the drive-through, but let's be aware that these issues do exist, and the least we want is to have some directional signage in the pavement, as well as some sort of directional signage with stop signs at the drive-through to avoid, I guess, needless accidents. That would be a good way to put it. And am I speaking, I think, for everybody? Is that kind of the consensus we're at? Okay. And does anybody have anything further for staff or the applicant?
If I may, maybe make a stipulation that something along the lines of approval of the staff plan, subject to approval by engineering. I don't know. Maybe they could take a look at it.
Anybody, any of the commissioners have any trouble with that?
No?
Okay,
Sounds good.
sounds good. Well, in that case, then, I will hint again that Chair will entertain any motion, and hopefully the reporting secretary has down that stipulation.
I move we adopt the findings of fact of staff as the findings of fact of the Plan Commission, and furthermore move to recommend approval of the special use for the drive-through facility for Jimmy John's at 15420 South Route 59 in Plainfield Plaza. Also pending approval of the plan by engineering.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Matter has been motioned and seconded. With that, we could have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Segerbrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Womack,
Yes.
Commissioner Menace,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Chairman Renzi.
Yes. With that, the motion with the added stipulation has been passed. Sir, if you could be in contact with staff, we're scheduled for the next board meeting, but maybe, maybe not.
Okay.
So, with that, and you're already going to be in contact with them as to all the other stuff that needs to do. And again, on behalf of my fellow commissioners, thank you for very much for this. We really liked the, at least from what I heard, everybody really liked the new look of the facility.
Right.
And we can welcome the Jimmy John's to the village. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. And with that, is there anything else?
Nope.
I believe then we can then, having concluded our meeting, no one has anything, we can simply adjourn. Meeting adjourned.